What's up, everybody? Good morning and happy Tuesday, January 30th. DK show up on the air on your radio dials, 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also available online, sportstalk1051.com. You got your Google and Alexa home devices. The Sports Talk app, which is rolling right now as well, and the video stream up on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Appreciate you making us part of your start on this Tuesday morning. Hey, what do we got on the good old game plan for us this morning? Bucks, the Doc Rivers era officially began last night. No loss. The Bucks falling to the Denver Nuggets, 115-107. However, Doc Rivers seeing some positive stuff afterward, saying that whoever told you guys, you can't play defense, was lying. He saw some improvements in the half court defense and all that good stuff there. But nonetheless, the first game under the Doc Rivers era coming in a loss. Giannis finishing with 29 points and 12 rebounds, another double double for the Greek Freak. Damian Lillard contributing 18, Brooke Lopez 19 points. Chris Middleton, who started off the game pretty darn hot, finishing at 14 points, 8 rebounds. So next up for the Bucks, that was game one of their road trip. Next game is going to be on Wednesday, going up against Portland, and the return Damian Lillard over there in Portland. So we'll talk some hoops. And speaking of hoops, it was a big win last night for the Timberwolves as we were kind of previewing that game a little bit yesterday. But in a battle of the two top teams in the Western Conference, it was the Timberwolves who picked up the 107-101 victory on the road to Anthony Edwards. 27 points for him. Alexander for OKC putting up 37, but T-Wolves getting the stat that matters the most. And that was a big win for them. Maybe a future kind of preview of a Western Conference Finals matchup. These two teams have already played 4 times this year, and they've split 2 and 2 apiece. So we got some hoops chats coming up here. Speaking of hoops, college hoops, the Badger men's basketball team jumping up to number 6 in the latest poll rankings. Moving on up. We're going to talk some Badgers. We're going to talk some Badger hoops with Mr. RJ Cardinal coming up in a couple of hours from now at about 8:20 this morning. But yeah, Badgers making a big jump thanks to them taking care of their own business, but other teams in front of them losing as well. So now just outside the top 5, moving up 7 spots in the AP poll. Your Badgers, 7 spots. That wasn't the biggest jump. That was the second biggest positive jump. The biggest one being Iowa State, who skyrocketed up 11 spots to number 12. Marquette also moved up 5 spots, the poll. They creeped into the top 10. They're sitting at number 9. But outside of the top 5, you had up you're talking teams that jumped up 6. New Mexico moved up 6 spots, as well. Auburn dropping 8 spots. There was a lot of movement. Oklahoma dropping 12 down to 23, so tons of movement, tons of movement. Wisconsin getting ready for their game against, Nebraska coming up here in just a couple days. And of course, that big one against Purdue at home at the Kohl Center on Sunday. Don't overlook Nebraska. Don't overlook them. Wisconsin still holding on to that half game lead for first place in the Big Ten Conference over Purdue. So we'll talk all things Badgers with again our buddy Mr. RJ Cardinal over there in Madison this morning. Marquette, by the way, they are in action tonight. The newly minted ninth ranked team in the country. They will be going up against Villanova. What else we got on the docket here this morning? Is a What's Your Beef Tuesday, Ray's Place What's Your Beef Tuesday. So, what's kind of grinding your gears? What's your beef? Let us know. Hit us up with some text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line at 715-830-1912. 715-830-1912. So we'll get to those. We will also continue our consulting work for the green and gold coming up here too. Let's uh let's take a look at the safeties today, shall we? Can we take a look at the safeties? I think that's probably the position group that is going to undergo the most change. It's one of the position groups that are going to undergo the most, but you can make the case that probably will have a lot of change to it in the offseason here. It was a position group that even before the season started, you got into training camp, you got into preseason games. There was some like battles, jobs to be won. The only player that seemed to have a job secured as a starter was Darnell Savage. And after that, it was like, is it going to be Rudy Ford? Is it going to be Jonathan Owens? Can the rookie Anthony Johnson Jr. make a play? Et cetera, et cetera. You had other guys kind of in a rotation there. And even so with Darnell Savage missed some time this year too because he was a little bit banged up. Now you got Darnell Savage, who's a free agent, Jonathan Owens, Rudy Ford, all those guys free agents. So what the heck do you do with that position group? What do you do with that position group? That's that's a question that Goody and his staff and the entire team have to figure out. One of the biggest question marks, in my opinion, that they got to work through to get some stability back there, consistency, and more talent. So, do you bring back guys like Darnell Savage, Jonathan Owens, Rudy Ford? Do you bring those guys back? You bring all of them back. You only bring maybe one of those guys back. If it's only one of those dudes, who are you bringing back? Which one? And when you look at the draft coming up here, and I know it's still, we're approaching February. We got Senior Bowl coming up, so kind of getting a little bit closer to that. There, you look at some safeties. There's mock draft. You got some kind of back end first round. Kinchins from Miami. The U. You got Tyler over there from Minnesota. Back end first round. Kind of some day two picks though. I mean, there's not a lot of top tier safety talent out there in the draft. Now, I would love a Kyle Hamilton, type of player that the Ravens have over there. Kind of a jack of all trades safety, physical safety. That would be awesome, but is there anybody out there that's kinda like that? So this is definitely, I think, a position group that Green Bay and a lot of it too is going to, I think, depend on the defensive coordinator, their background coming in here too, but regardless of who the defensive coordinator is, they gotta get better. They gotta get better at that position. You talk about communication. I mean, how many times have we talked about communication with this defense or, lack thereof, issues with the communication back there? A lot of that comes from that safety position. Now, there are some free agents out there. Antoine Winfield Jr. from Tampa Bay, although I don't feel like Tampa Bay is gonna let him go. That's probably one of the big ones out there. I, again, don't think they'll let him go. So, let's hit that up here too, all right, shall we? Kinda do a little, the consulting work here again, taking a look at that safety group for the Pack, shall we? Yeah, let's do it. That's where we're gonna do our consulting work here this morning. Nothing I haven't seen any rumors surrounding defensive coordinator, anything new, I should say. other than what we kind of recapped yesterday and such. Kinda quiet. Don't know if that means they're already completing, their first wave or they're just really kinda keeping it under wraps here, but, it's been fairly quiet in terms of what's gonna be, popping over here. Now, I still feel like I know it's Tuesday and it's still kinda quiet and such, but I still feel like end of the weekend, we may know who that new defensive coordinator is going to be for Green Bay. So, I mean, do you necessarily have a preference, whether it's a young and upcoming, player? Do you or excuse me, a coach? Like, we went through some of the guys yesterday, and 3 of the 4 don't have coordinating experience. They're up and coming position coaches. Would you rather have an experienced coordinator coming in, or would you rather have maybe a younger, sky's the limit, stock rising, star rising type of coach? Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter to you. We won't know how they work out until, you know, you see them actually on the field, putting together game plans and calling games. All right, let's get things rolling here this morning, shall we? So that's kind of what's on your docket for us this morning. We got some hoops chat with the Bucks with the new era beginning. Doc Rivers, Bucks falling though to the Nuggets last night. Badger basketball just outside the top 5, top 6 ranking. Hey, baseball, Twins-wise, we did have a move. We did have a trade. Jorge Polanco is getting traded for the Twins. He's going over there to the Mariners, Justin Topa, and some other players coming over in exchange and such. And the Brewers too. I should mention Brewers yesterday making it officially official with Hoskins with his signing. He talked a little bit with the media and such, but said that Milwaukee was always a great paper fit. Said he was looking to go to a winner, all that sort of stuff. Matt Arnold also chatted a little bit too. So we'll go through some of his comments about maybe what the game plan is still for this offseason, the mindset. Could there potentially be some more moves made by the Brewers? We'll go over some of the comments from General Manager Matt Arnold a little bit later on. So let's get her rolling here this morning. Let's chat a little hoops, then we'll get to some football chat as we continue our consulting series for the green and gold. Taking a look at the safeties. Is there any of these? This is the question I'm going to pose out to you, my fellow consultants out there. The Darnell Savages, the Jonathan Owens, the Rudy Ford, any one of those guys. You had to pick one. I'm going to ask you to narrow it down. If you had to pick one, who would you bring back? And let's assume Darnell might be cost a little bit more. Darnell might cost a little bit more. Age, when he has been healthy, he's made some plays and stuff, maybe a little bit more of a splashier player than those other 2. So let's assume Darnell's gonna cost more, has been banged up. Does that factor in at all? Taking a look at that, you got Owens and Rudy Ford. Which one of those guys? Rudy Ford missed a lot of time this year too, and with her and it kinda seemed like when he was active, kinda benched for Owens. Then you got Anthony Johnson Jr., but we know he's there. So those 3, you bring back 1, knowing that Savage might just cost a little bit more. Who you got? Alright, think about that for a little bit. Hit me up with those texts. Take our first break, and then we'll rock and roll this morning. All right, get things going here. Have some fun, shall we? We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Getting things going here this morning. The new era, Doc Rivers era, beginning last night for the Milwaukee Bucks. It was a loss, 113 to 107 at the hands of the Denver Nuggets. Although, maybe taking some positives from this thing. Doc Rivers telling his team that whoever told you you can't play defense, they're lying, giving them some credit in their half court defense and such. But also, Doc Rivers after the game saying they're great. They're a very coachable team. Talking about his new Bucks team, Chris Middleton saying he did a great job commanding the team, leading the team. It's going to take some time for us to get used to him and him to see what we've been doing and how we've been successful so far this season and in the past. So, you got definitely some. And then Giannis went to Twitter afterwards and posting the future is bright. Future is bright. I think we all kind of know what he's referring to there, right? Kind of alluding to potentially like, hey, we're gonna be good. We're gonna be good. So we shall see, though. We shall see. It's gonna take a little bit. Might be a little bit of an adjustment time. Doc Rivers said that he's trying to slowly bring in or kind of slowly do what he wants to do, but also, kind of still doing what they're used to. It's just that the process, kinda you don't wanna, like, "Alright, you gotta stop doing this, and we're instantly gonna do this." That would probably make it a little bit worse at that point in time, but, you might have some bumps in the road coming up here. I think by the time we get to the postseason here, this is when we wanna see the Bucks team really kinda start to take shape here, really kinda start to take off. Maybe is it fair to say to maybe kinda tread some water right now? Not to fall too far back in the standings, not to fall too far back in the Eastern Conference, but maybe kinda tread water as the top 3 team in the Eastern Conference, and then when you kind of, finally getting into gear, everybody's kind of on the same page, hopefully you're playing your best basketball once the playoff starts, coming up, in the spring and such. Bucks, though, next game coming up here is going to be Wednesday, Portland. Damian Lillard going up against his former team. And then you've got Dallas on Saturday, Utah Sunday, Phoenix a week from today before the Bucks finally return home, which should be a fantastic game, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, going up against the Minnesota Timberwolves. That should be a fantastic. That one was in Minnesota. I might have to make the jump over there. In fact, calendar's kind of small, so I gotta like squeeze my eyeballs. Bucks do face Minnesota in Minnesota. It looks like on Friday, 23rd. Wonder what tickets are going for that game. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I'm gonna have to check that one out. Hopefully, Giannis is playing though. Well, I mean that's right after their All Star break, so yeah, he should be ready to go there. Everybody should be ready to go and healthy. Heck, look those tickets up, man. Absolutely. So, um, yeah, I know there's gonna be some Bucks fans that are not gonna necessarily, probably be a little patient with this thing, and maybe not. Again, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that some fans, a lot of fans, not too excited about Doc Rivers and what he can do for this team. But I'm going to take the optimistic approach. I'm going to be like, okay, let's take a deep breath here. Let's see how it rolls. Because really, was it from what we saw from October, November, December, and most of January? It felt like this Bucks team, I'm sorry, wasn't gonna be a team that was gonna win a championship this year. They didn't have that vibe. They felt like a good team, but not a great team. A very good offensive team with a very stinky defensive team, kind of like some Packers teams in the past. Really good offense, horrible defense. Gotta score a lot, can't stop anything. Kinda taking some shades from those former Packers teams that I'm sure a lot of us is probably running through our heads right now. And then once in a while, you would have these like really good defensive performances that'd be like, why can't you do this every single time? I'm talking about, the Boston game in the beginning of January where, I mean, Boston pretty much like, "All right, we're done at halftime." They pulled the triggers. Like, why can't you play like that defensively and such every single time? Gosh, kinda like Green Bay. Never thought of that until now. So hopefully they get a it's kinda like it's almost kinda like think about it. The Bucks also switched up their defensive coordinator here a little bit. Kinda. I know it's a head coach, but I think a big reason why because of their poor defense. They're really, really crappy defense over there. So I'm willing to give it a little bit, okay? Let's be a little patient. There's gonna be some bumps in the roads. There's gonna be some issues and such, but I do think we're gonna see a better Bucks team in the next, month or so. Maybe a team that you feel a little bit better about going forward. Staying with hoops, the Minnesota Timberwolves picking up the big W last night. In case we've got any T-Wolves fans, I know we got a few. We got a few. We're close over there. Big win for the Timberwolves on the road last night against Oklahoma City Thunder. Anthony Edwards putting up 27 points to lead the T-Wolves to victory. Uh, Gilgeous Alexander did have 37 for OKC. Anthony Edwards after the game saying, kind of critical. Kind of critical. He was critical to fans or excuse me, the refs. And it was like 8 versus 5 out there. But T Wolves picking up that win to remain in now sole possession of first place in the Western Conference. Denver's now a half game back. Oklahoma City 1 game back. The Clippers 2 games back in the Western Conference. Kind of paying attention to that. It is a cluster at the top there. A cluster. You look at the job the Timberwolves have done. They're scoring about 113 a game. Opponents' points per game. This is the difference here. So the Timberwolves are only allowing 107.4 points per game. Okay, put it in comparison, and that's the best in the Western Conference. In fact, that is the that is the best in the NBA. So the Minnesota Timberwolves are the best in opponents' points per game, 107.4. Just how bad has the Bucks been? 120, 120 points per game they've been giving up. Now the Bucks are scoring 124 points per game, which is second most in the entire league, just behind the Indiana Pacers, who are putting up 124.8. That's where I think, man, I can't wait to watch that. Not to look too far ahead on this thing, but I can't wait to see this Bucks and Timberwolves game coming up, next Thursday, just to kind of see, Bucks offense going up against that Timberwolves defense. You know, Ideally, I think for a lot of us in our area here in West Central, Northwestern Scotty, would love to see a Bucks and Timberwolves finals, NBA finals. That'd be amazing. We'd be making a bunch of road trips and hopefully doing some shows over there. But seeing that Bucks offense going up against the T-Wolves defense, that should be a lot of fun. That'd be a lot of fun. All right, before we take our break and switch gears here a little bit, sticking with hoops, but on the college side of things, Badger basketball team jumping up 7 spots. I was kind of wondering, would they inch closer, maybe just kind of crack the top 10? No, they didn't just crack it; they vaulted into that top 10, number 6 in the country in the latest polls. Your Badger basketball team, number 6 in the country. Marquette also climbing back into the top 10. They're at number 9. The state of Wisconsin has 2 top 10 men's basketball programs, according to the latest AP polls. Your state of Wisconsin has 2 top 10 men's basketball teams. But this Wisconsin team, 16 and 4. I think, not to get too far ahead because they cannot overlook Nebraska. Don't overlook Nebraska. Pesky team. They're 15 and 6. Okay. Nebraska's 15 and 6. They're 5 and 5 in conference play. but they'll give you a lot. I mean, they're gonna be a pesky. I mean, they did beat Purdue, okay? They beat Purdue. They did lose to Wisconsin earlier this season, so maybe, with, like, a little, "Okay, well, let's get back at them here." But don't overlook Nebraska, but I think if Wisconsin takes care of business against Nebraska and they welcome Purdue into the Kohl Center and they beat Purdue, that is going to be the game that I think really maybe potentially opens up some more eyes across the country, which is kinda weird to say. You've got a team that's ranked number 6. But I think there's still some pessimism surrounding this team. Like, okay, how good are they really? Like, is it just, they're okay, they're winning games, but also a lot of the other teams are losing, top ranked teams out there, so are they benefiting from that? Because if you haven't watched a hoops game yet, watch it just maybe to even watch AJ Store. This kid is something. This is a huge, you know, may have flown under the radar a little bit when he transferred to Wisconsin. Might have flown under the radar here a little bit. But what a pickup by Greg Gard and his staff to get this kid to Wisconsin. AJ scored 15.9 points per game, and he's shooting 44.4% from the field. This kid, a 6'7" guard, has been a lot of fun to watch as a Badgers fan, but so critical, so important to what the Badgers' success has been like so far this year. And, he transferred over from St. John, played in 33 games, started 17 of those, just averaged 8.8, was one of the, I think, Big East freshman team, comes over to Wisconsin and has just been lighting it up. This kid is so fun to watch. And I hope we get a couple years of this. I hope we get a couple more years with AJ Store over there. Man, that game on Sunday is gonna be a lot of fun. I think if they take care of business, they beat Purdue. Oh, there you're gonna start to get some more talking about the Badgers. And you look at the schedule. Well, got a little over a month left. Not a ton of games left here, man. You're gonna have the conference tournament. Then we're gonna get into some March Madness. All right, let's take a quick break. All right, consulting time. Packer safeties. You could pick one. Who you keeping? Big thanks to all of you ice fishermen right now who have sent us some photos for the Tilden Gun Trophy Gallery. Posted that Facebook post last night. I'm going to add them to the website later on today. But any of you having any luck? Maybe even trapping? I got a photo to add too. So we got a photo sent for some trapping success out there too. So send those photos to me so we can put them up on our trophy gallery at sportstalk1051.com. And reminder for all of your firearm needs, hunting. Maybe I know this is the off season and such, but this is the off season to upgrade your hunting gear. Head to our friends over at Tilden Gun. You can also visit their website to check out their massive selection at amazing prices at tildengun.com. All right, consulting. Let's continue our consulting work for the green and gold. Still awaiting some more rumors. I'm like clamoring for some rumors about the Packers defensive coordinator position. But until then, we're kind of doing some consulting work here and looking at positions and, kind of assessing what it was like this year and maybe looking ahead to how they can either improve or stay the course or what they should do with that position this coming off season. And one of them that I think is going to be really interesting to follow and to watch for the Pack is going to be the safety group. Now, the safety position was a position that you could kind of maybe say was overlooked in the offseason or not addressed enough when we headed into preseason games and training camp. It was a position group that a starting job was up for grabs. Darnell Savage was one of them, and then you had Rudy Ford and Jonathan Owens kind of battling it out. Anthony Johnson Jr. getting some reps. The safety, 7th round pick, rookie safety, 7th round pick. And now this year you've got Darnell Savage, who's a free agent. You've got Rudy Ford, who's a free agent, and Jonathan Owens, who's a free agent. Jonathan Owens, I would say, got better as the season progressed. Kind of, I think, really turned a page, maybe that Thanksgiving Day game against Detroit. Darnell missed some time, injury and such, but when he's on, Darnell is such an interesting player because when he's on and he's playing really well, he's good. He's a really solid player. It's just the consistency surrounding Darnell Savage that is just like, do this every single time. Rudy Ford was banged up this year. A lot of thought that he would be the starter heading into it and kind of got that role right away. But mostly when he was first brought in last year, it was for special teams when the Jaguars released him and got opportunities to play defense, had that Dallas game where he had a couple picks against Dak. But I think for sure this is a position group that Brian Gutekunst really has to look at hard. Be like, okay, we got to get better here. And if one of our major issues on defense last year was a lack of communication or poor communication, you've got to get better in the back end. In today's NFL, in today's game, you've got to have some good safety play. It can't be consistent. That's your last line of defense in a lot of cases here. Now, to me, I would love a Kyle Hamilton type of player, Raven safety. Physical, could play up in the box, line of scrimmage, back end, covers your tight ends. I would love that style of safety. There's just, right now, there really isn't that dude out there. Perhaps the best safety available in the draft, if we're kind of taking a look at an early draft board, and really when you kind of look at the depth at safety, you're talking back end first round, mostly day 2 type of players. But the top 2 that you've maybe seen in mock drafts go in the back end or early in the second round, Kinchins from Miami, Tyler Nubin from Minnesota. Those are your probably 2. Then you got Kalen Bullock from USC. That's mixed in there too. So those are probably your top 3 safeties because I think for me, safety is a big need in this draft for Green Bay. Now, if you're looking at free agents to kind of come in, maybe spend a little bit to bring them in there, Antoine Winfield Jr., he's going to be up there, but I'd be shocked if Tampa Bay lets him go. Got Kyle Duggar from New England, kind of a hybrid safety linebacker over there. So maybe they look at somebody out there too, but I feel like Green Bay is going to address it early in the draft and bring back one of their guys, at least one of their guys. Now the question is, which one? Because if you bring back Savage, you kind of got a little bit more coverage with him, kind of that center field type of safety. Now, again, there's a lot of talk. Is he better suited as a nickel corner? Is he better suited in a coverage role like that? Maybe with a new defensive coordinator coming in, they'd be like, hey, I want Savage because I can play him at that nickel slot, but also do some different things here. The type of safety that I think that maybe they address in the draft will maybe kind of depend on which safety they decide to keep. I think Savage is probably going to cost a little bit more. But if it were me, and I was doing a little consulting work here, if it were me, I'd have no problem bringing back Darnell on a 1 year. If he takes a 1 year, maybe, that's the one thing. Can't just say, hey, take the 1 year and take it. If he would be willing to take a 1 year, kind of, 1 year, prove it, has a chance to make more money. Again, it's going to depend on his market. Just takes one team to go out there and blow it out of the water with an offer. But I wouldn't mind Jonathan Owens back either. Now, I don't think Jonathan Owens is a difference maker at the safety position. I think he's a good depth piece. I think he gives you solid depth at that position. But I want a playmaker, a difference maker at that safety spot. They got to figure out who that is. That to me is if they find that, and you look at the rest of the roster on the defensive side, you got your defensive line that they've invested in a lot. Devontae Wyatt's up there. Kenny Clark. They used a couple picks last year with Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, who showed some promise this year. They've invested in their edge rushers, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness. They've invested in inside linebackers with Quay Walker. We'll see about Devondre Campbell. Corner, Jair. First-round pick, Eric Stokes. This year, they have to invest in the safety. They've got to figure out that position. It got overlooked. I don't think it purposely got overlooked last year, but it kind of was like, okay, that's the one we're probably going to take a hit on. They've got to get that true number one safety. Like when you look at it, it's like, okay, that's a dude. And a versatile safety. I want a versatile safety. I want a safety that you're not just pigeonholing into a role. Ideally, I would love a safety that, hey, you know what? He can come on a blitz. Hey, you know what? He can help stop the run. But at the same time, he's going to be able to cover some tight ends. Maybe even help you in the back end over the top on a double coverage. I want that versatile Swiss Army type of safety back there. Not just a dude who is going to, he's a really good run stopper, but really stinks in coverage. I want that versatile. So if it were up to me, and I would hand in a report to Goody, I'd say I don't mind bringing back Darnell. I wouldn't invest long-term in him. If he'd be willing to do a 1 year, maybe even a 2 year, who knows? Because really the depth there is so up in the air with this group. If you want to do a 2 year deal, okay. I got no problem bringing back Jonathan Owens. Again, I think he's a very good depth piece, but he's not a difference-making safety over there. You've got to find that guy in the draft or free agency, wherever it's coming. That you've got to get better at. Get better at safety. You're going to get better at communication. And I think that's going to be a big improvement to your defensive unit overall, too. And a lot of that's going to depend on the coordinator that they do hire. The background they come in, the style, the scheme that they're going to bring over to Green Bay, too. Safety, that safety group's going to be an interesting follow this offseason for sure, considering their approach, what it was like last year and in preseason and training camp, how it played out this year with a bunch of different bodies. I mean, we could probably all think of some games like, oh, okay, so now this formation is going to be Savage and Owens, and then the next one was like Rudy Ford and Anthony Johnson Jr. Going back there, it was quite the rotation back there. They were just trying to find something that was working. And Matt LaFleur, I mean, at the end of the season, talked about how communication's so much better when Darnell Savage is back there. Talking about that's one of his main keys, one of the big things that he brings to that group. All right, we'll talk some more green and golds coming up a little bit later on. Next hour, we'll do some sports nuggets of the day. Don't forget, though, it is a What's Your Beef Tuesday. Ray's Place What's Your Beef Tuesday. That Shoe Doctors bullpen line with What's Your Beef on this Tuesday. We'll go through that. This is your time to kind of get it off your chest, if you will. We're going to talk some more Badgers with Mr. Cardinal coming up at about 8:20. Talk about the newly minted 6th-ranked men's basketball team in the country. We'll also throw in some hockey chat there, men's, women's, Badger hockey with Mr. Cardinal too. We got Senior Bowl week. We'll even throw some of that conversation into the fray. Senior Bowl coming up on Saturday for college football. So this is a chance for a lot of those guys to kind of maybe make their mark, improve their first chance at improving their draft stock and such. So we got Wisconsin's got their long snapper Peter Bowden in there. Hey, maybe Badgers looking at that. Tanner Bortolini also in the Senior Bowl, offensive lineman. So we'll hit that up a little bit with RJ coming up at about 8:20 this morning. We got that. We got a few texts to get to here with surrounding the Bucks. The Bucks making their debut, or I should say, Doc Rivers making his debut with the Bucks last night. Quick texter saying, "Watch the game. I know it was just one game, but you could tell there was a little bit of a different energy with the Bucks on the defensive side. Hopefully, this is a sign of things to come." I was one of those who is a little hesitant on the Doc Rivers hire, but like you've said a few times, who else was out there and willing to give it a shot to see what happens? Another texter here. This one is from Ben. Ben saying that I'm willing to give this Doc Rivers era a shot, and hopefully the Bucks can use this and change up the momentum and energy within that locker room. I feel like that was kind of getting drained in the final weeks of the Adrian Griffin era. I do think, with Doc Rivers coming in, you change your head coach and such, and you bring somebody in like Rivers, it does change the energy. It does change a little bit of the enthusiasm inside that locker room. And hopefully that's something that can continue throughout the entire season over there. All right, we'll finish up the first hour with Morgan. Good morning, Morg.
What team would you like to coach? Because, Doc steps in a new role. Everybody's going to be critical. If you could take the clipboard and go to the sidelines, cross the board sports, football, basketball, baseball, what teams would you like to coach? Doesn't have to be Wisconsin centric. If there is just a team you would
So I
like to
got to
get your
pick a
hands on.
specific team.
You have to in this era, not past,
Right.
not
But
not
like a
like the
specific, like
68
the
Packers,
Jets
but
or,
right,
okay.
just a current team that you think would do better under a different coaching regime that you would like to get your hands on if you could.
Boy.
Because
Yeah,
every team
yeah,
has its key players that you think, okay, this, maybe they're ill-fitted for this position, or maybe if they had, a better
yeah,
surrounding squad or whatever it is. But as a coach, you kinda are the ones to put those pieces into
yeah.
position. Like,
I
would you
would I
want
would
the
say the Chargers, but I mean Harbaugh's got it now, so I mean they got so much talent. I think a coach there would make all the difference.
not Belichick. He's still floating around out
Oh
there
no,
with
but I'm saying
Tunuits,
like
but
Harbaugh's over there now too, and
yeah.
I think that's so. But
But would you like to get your hands on this Bucks team like Doc has now? I mean, is this a team that you would like to coach? Do you think the raw talent is there? They just need a little bit
raw
of
talent's there. I think it was a situation of inmates running the asylum,
Mhm.
and, I don't bring the they would run the asylum on me.
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
let him.
Oh, yeah.
You're taller.
Yeah,
You're right. Okay.
I'm,
Mm.
okay, yeah, you're Giannis, do whatever you want,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
that
I would
sort of
have a
thing.
hard time as a
Mhm.
coach standing up to players that I mean, ultimately, you probably
Give me
have a
a
little bit of
give me a
idolizing.
first grade flag football team.
Yeah. Watch out for the parents there. That's the worst part.
You're telling me.
So what about, football then? Say, we'll give you basketball, this Bucks team, okay, just because Doc's
Yeah.
got his new hands in the mix. What about a football team? Like, okay, take it to the big game. Would you rather have KC or would you rather coach
Ooh,
49ers in the bowl?
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Because you got,
I'd
obviously
probably
different pros and cons lists on both sides of the ball.
I'd probably rather coach maybe the Chiefs because of the quarterback.
Okay.
You kinda know a little bit more what you got with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I don't wanna deal with the Taylor Swift stuff, though.
You don't want the,
Yeah,
Swift factor in there?
yeah.
Well,
But
with
I'd probably go Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes.
so you would take the Chiefs
Yeah,
sidelines on that one?
yeah.
What about now we're outside and coming up on possibly 50 degrees tomorrow, puts you in baseball. What, baseball team would you like to get your hands off if you could?
Dodgers.
Yeah?
Just go out there and do whatever. You're so talented right now.
Yeah,
Although
well,
that's all the pressure too, because if you don't win, you're gonna get fired,
you
so,
do and
yeah.
you're more critical, especially
Mhm.
when the pockets run that deep
Either the
because
Dodgers or Kansas City because there's a team like that because there's no expectation, so it's like, whatever.
yeah, but that's mailing it in.
Yeah.
Don't you want a coaching job that you can really sink in and plant your
Well,
flag
you're
and make a
asking me to
difference in?
pick a sport that I would probably suck at, so I'm like, "Well, I'll just go suck at coaching baseball,
You
so
just
I'll just
want it
mail it
somewhere
in
that
with
the
Kansas City."
players don't need you.
Yeah.
You just need to stand there and say, "Good job, guys."
Yep. Either
No, we
where they're
need a
gonna be
Ted
bad
Lasso. We need
or
you to bring them
well,
around, man.
I don't have the dance moves like Ted Lasso.
Work on them, brush them
No,
up a little
I'm
bit.
too old.
So not soccer is what you're saying.
Second hour kicking off right now on this Tuesday morning. Appreciate y'all tuning in wherever, however you may be tuning in from. Coming up, we're going to get to a couple of sports nuggets of the day here in just a little bit. Also, we'll get back to some more football talk. We got Joey D coming up here in a little bit. We'll talk some Badgers with RJ Cardinal. A little over an hour. We got some What's Your Beefs presented by Ray's Place this morning. So we'll get to that. But first, let's do some sports nuggets of the day, shall we? If it's going to load up for me. How about 1910? Work began on the first board track automobile speedway. The track was built in California. Okay. We've got what do we got here? Dan Jansen of the United States in 1994 set a world record of 35.76 when he became the first to skate 500 meters in less than 36 seconds. So 35.76 seconds. I think that's about it. 94 Super Bowl, Dallas beat the Buffalo Bills 30-13. All right, so just a couple of those, couple of sports nuggets of the day this morning. I like this one. I apologize. Is it? I think I asked you this last time, but if I mispronounce it, I apologize. Is it swoopy, swoopy? My beef is people on social media saying that the NFL is rigged. I agree with you, man. You know, I've been seeing that more, and that bugs me too. That bugs me too. And I agree with you. Totally agree with you. We've got a Packers defensive coordinator updates. Ian Rappaport just tweeting out a minute ago that the Packers requested to speak with Ravens secondary coach Denard Wilson for their vacant defensive coordinator job. He's also interviewing with the Titans today, and the Rams and Giants have talked to him as well. I like that one. That one made my list. When we went through it, we had a podcast episode of it last week. Had six names of a watch list over there. I like that one. I was waiting for this one to kind of come out. I'm glad we got that one. That's a dude who his stock has been pretty darn high in the last couple of years here too. So Denard Wilson, a little bit of a background on Denard Wilson here. With the Ravens, secondary coach. He was also with the Philadelphia Eagles for a bit. 2021, he was a defensive backs coach. 2022, he was their passing game coordinator along with defensive backs coach. Got bypassed for the defensive coordinator position, went to Baltimore. Went to Baltimore over there. And there was even some talk in Philly. Did they kind of make a mistake of maybe not giving him the defensive coordinator job this past year? And he's gotten some more experience. He was with the Jets from 2019 to 20 as their defensive backs coach, passing game coordinator. Actually, from 2017 to 2020 was with the Rams for a couple years as defensive backs coach over there too. But you look at when he was with Philly, the work that he did with Darius Slay, Bradbury, and then C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You look at this year, we were just talking about Kyle Hamilton from Baltimore, working with him and such. I like this one. This is of the names that are being reported, out there that have interviewed or will interview for the Packers defensive coordinator position. This is my top one. Not saying it's my number one wish list overall, but if I were to rank the ones that they have reportedly interviewed with or will interview with, this is my number one. I'd be good if Denard Wilson is the hire for defensive coordinator. I like this one. Finally, I was waiting for this one to kind of pop through. Which to me tells me, I mean, there was some talk over the weekend. Could there be, was it Christian Parker, the guy from Denver, defensive backs coach over there too? Kinda seemed like, according to social media, that he was like, "Oh, that might be the favorite 32-year-old, young but a rising star in the profession." Could he be the guy kind of, social media was kinda trending towards that way, but that's the dangers of social media too. What's trending, right? So, if anything, I think this tells you that Matt LaFleur is not ready yet to make a decision, wants to see what else is out there, kind of go throughout the entire talent pool. I like this one. I like this one. I'm glad to see that he's getting a shot at this. We shall see. If you get him in, maybe don't let him leave. Just saying. All right. Got some more texts surrounding the Bucks here. We'll get back to some football chat coming up a little bit later on. This one is from David. David saying about the Bucks. I don't think the Bucks are going to win the championship this year. I think the Celtics are just such a powerhouse team, but I do think we're going to see a better Bucks team after the All-Star break once they get more comfortable under the Doc Rivers system. Another one here about the Bucks. Do you think the Bucks will make a big time move before the trade deadline? There seems to be more chit chat out there about the Bucks making a big move before the trade deadline. Um, Never say never. I know that's probably not something that is a great answer there. We keep hearing that money wise they can't. They don't have a lot of assets to trade off. But it's John Horst. It's John Horst and this Bucks front office and this ownership group from the last few years has shown if they can find a little bit of a crack, if they can find a little bit of a light to be able to do something to make a move that they feel like is going to be better for their team, they're going to do it. They're going to do that. So that's why I keep saying never say never. It on all surfaces, it seems to be very difficult financially, stock wise, stock of players to make a move. But I don't think you can completely rule it out because it's the Bucks and this is what they've been doing the last few years. And I know I saw, was it from Yahoo Sports? Yeah, Jake Fisher. Per Yahoo Sports, Jake Fisher, Milwaukee is a team rumored to be looking for point guard help on the market. Interestingly enough, Fisher added that the Bucks are evaluating players in the quote upper echelon. So I don't know if that's what you were kind of referring to over there, but I saw that yesterday as well. Here's an interesting name that I kind of wondered, could he be a possibility? He's going to cost a lot, and that's where I don't know if it would fit. But what about bringing back Malcolm Brogdon? What about bringing back Brogdon to Milwaukee? I kind of feel bad for Malcolm Brogdon. I feel like Malcolm Brogdon, throughout his career, has been a really solid, really good player, but not a great player. So he's always the guy that gets part of trade packages or gets traded for the great players. Like he's a good player. He's a very solid player, but he's the guy that always gets thrown into like superstar package trades. So, after the Bucks goes to the Pacers, sign and trade. Then gets traded to Boston. Boston trying to bring him, brings him over there, building the depth up there. And then after, the Drew Holiday thing, they ship him off to Portland. But what would your thoughts be about Brogdon coming back to Milwaukee? And the thing is, too, with these trades, the name that is really kind of popping up as a possible, actually, there's probably two. But there's one that has really maybe garnered a little bit more momentum as a possible trade asset for the Bucks, and that's Bobby Portis. Now, I don't feel like that would be a very popular move amongst Bucks fans if they trade Bobby Portis. He's a fan favorite, right? He is a fan favorite. We love him. By all accounts, I think teammates love him. But would you be willing if you got some defensive help on the perimeter, let's say. You got some help at that defensive position in the backcourt. Would you be willing to maybe give up a Bobby Portis as part of a trade package for that? What if it took Bobby Portis to bring back Malcolm Brogdon? Is that something you'd be willing to do? The other name in there is kind of being thrown out there is Pat Connaughton as a potential, throwing him into a trade package and such. Another potential name that's being thrown out there as a possible trade target for the Bucks too is Bruce Brown. Now, Bruce Brown he's kind of an interesting player. He's, some different roles. He isn't really your typical true point guard. He can play a little wing. He's about 6'4", so he's a bigger point guard, but you're talking like defense. If you want to improve, and I still feel like that's the Bucks' priority, even though they got a new coach in here and they got Doc Rivers bringing in his system. They want to improve that perimeter defense, that wing defense. And Bruce Brown's a guy. Bruce Brown Jr. is a guy that has shown he can do that. He brings a little versatility. He's not a typical point guard, but he could fill a need on that defensive perimeter for the Bucks. And that's also going to be a deal where you might have to put in Portis, Pat Connaughton, draft picks and such. So if the Bucks really feel like they have to improve their defense, they have to get better in the perimeter. They got to make that tough decision, but potentially moving on from Portis and Pat Connaughton. If you take away your fanism out of it, do you make that move? You might have to consider it. You might have to consider that. All right, let's take a quick break here. We'll talk some more green and golds coming up after this quick break.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
This story is called The Ugly Truth About Timeshare. If you think you've done your family a favor by buying a timeshare, you need my help. Hello, I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group. 10 years ago, I started helping folks cancel their timeshare. In the process, started what's now called the timeshare cancellation industry. The ugly truth is when you buy a timeshare, you can't tell me how much it's going to cost or when it's going to end. I recently helped a couple that had their maintenance fees go from $800 to $3,200 a year. They also received a $4,000 assessment for a hurricane that was over 1,000 miles away. Sound crazy? The crazy thing is, this never ends. Call my office now. If we take you as a client, I guarantee we'll cancel your timeshare or you'll pay nothing.
Call for your free information kit. Call 800-462-3333. That's 800-462-3333. 800-462-3333.
One of the fiercest rivalries in hockey is coming to St. Paul. The U.S. and Canadian women's national teams face off in the 7th and final game of Rivalry Series USA versus Canada, Sunday, February 11th at 1 p.m. at the Xcel Energy Center. We've got a pair of tickets to go watch the finale. Just click on Fan Cave at sportstalk1051.com and scroll down to the prize dugout to enter to win. Watch Team USA versus Team Canada from Sports Talk 105.1.
Ring in the new year with better water. You may think you can save money and time by doing the DIY route with big box store alternatives. Don't be so sure with your drinking water. Book your free home analysis online now with a water expert at Gibson's Water Care. No long-term contracts. Locally owned American-made products. Need a plumber? Gibson's can help with basic plumbing needs too. Go online to Gibson's Water Care for more details.
Do you know of anyone who needs some help chasing their dreams and passions? Backyard Dreams wants to help. Email us at info@sportstalk1051.com so we can help.
We'll get the picks updated in the fan cave at sportstalk1051.com. New picks coming later today, so make sure you check back to see the latest standings in our Pick'em Challenge up there. Who's on top of the leaderboard? Bragging rights are at stake. We're going to throw in some basketball games on there, including that big Badger and Purdue game coming up on Sunday there. That's going to be a fun one there, too. So check for that later on today after we update everything over there. And don't forget to always make your picks every week. We'll kind of be focusing mostly on the weekend games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That way it gives people some time. I don't want to put up a game that's tonight and somebody forgets to make the pick and be like, do it. I lost because I didn't know where to make it. So it's focused mostly on Friday and Saturday and Sunday games over there. So those will be up a little bit later on today. But you got to be a member of our fan cave over there too. So you can instantly do that by just signing up to make some picks over there. All right. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network reporting that the Packers have requested permission to interview secondary coach from the Baltimore Ravens, Denard Wilson, my number one target over there. So I'm pumped about this. Hopefully the Titans are interviewing him today for their defensive coordinator. Hopefully Green Bay gets a shot at bringing him on in here. But yesterday we broke down some of the other names that have been attached with it. The one that probably majority of fans know more about is Brandon Staley, the former head coach for the Chargers, defensive coordinator for the Rams. Other ones were some position players or position coaches, and such. Let's talk a little bit more about these defensive coordinators right now with Joey DeGuano. Joe, any of the reported names that have been out there that maybe get you excited or maybe at bare minimum intrigue you as a possibility for defensive coordinator for the Packers?
Right now, and I would say based on who they've interviewed. And again, I think that there might be some more names coming out. Last week, there were reports that Christian Parker, the DB coach for the Broncos, had actually been offered the position. Not sure if that's true or not because we haven't heard any verification from 1265. but I think you're looking at the type of coach when Brandon Staley is kind of the exception, and I almost think that was almost a friend interviewing a friend or type of situation when MLF brought Staley in, because all the other ones are position coaches and they're younger guys, and I think right now, based on who they've interviewed, and again, there might be someone else out there that we don't even know yet. I would put Parker, Babbage, and Wilson as kind of the leads in the clubhouse, and they all bring something a little bit different. And when you look at Christian Parker, and again, this is a guy who Vance Joseph speaks so highly of, and his players really rally around him, and so you've got that kind of a dynamic with Christian Parker that I think he brings to the table, and again, this is a guy that's got a couple of different coaching trees that he's been a part of. And so you could go a lot of different ways with him. Then you got Bobby Babbage, who I think also brings something different to the table. And this is a guy that was Cleveland Browns for a while. He was Carolina Panthers, Buffalo Bills. So he brings some different elements in. And then you look at the elements that Wilson brings in. He worked with the Bears. He worked with Spags in St. Louis. He worked with Greg Williams. He worked with Todd Bowles. He worked with Mike McDonald. And so you got a picture now, I think, of what MLF is looking for, and it just depends on which one I think he feels is going to be the best fit. But I would say that, again, Wilson and Babbage and Parker are the three that, at least at this point, I am most excited about.
Three different styles, and if you want to include the defensive line coach from the Cowboys over there too, the Dan Quinn formation, it seems like LaFleur is really kind of looking at different scenarios. Like maybe he's not necessarily pigeonholed on one style of defense. A few years ago, it was like he likes the Vic Fangio style, and maybe that was a big reason why Joe Barry was brought in. Ejiro Evero was a part of that a little bit over there too. It seems like at least Matt LaFleur is expanding the horizon and maybe trying to kind of take an open book approach at different styles of defense right now.
Yeah, and I think and again, I don't know what's going on with MLF's mind, but I think he's looking at hiring the person rather than necessarily the defense. And I think that's where he probably erred with Joe Barry, is he was so enamored with that defense. And again, that defense was most successful with the Rams. And when you have Jalen Ramsey, when you have Aaron Donald, that makes a defensive coordinator look pretty smart. And so, yeah, I think MLF is looking at this and saying, I got to hire the right person for this team, and then we can maybe work together on a defensive philosophy. And Christian Parker and Bobby Babbage both have Mike Pettin lineage there too. And so it'll be interesting where this thing goes. But I think the biggest difference now, at least that I'm seeing from the outside looking in, is MLF really is saying, which guy is the guy I want to go after, not necessarily which defense.
Those three guys too, and I know Babbage is right now linebackers, but he started off secondary and safeties, and you add in Parker and Wilson. Those are defensive backs and secondary coaches. Do you think there's something there that he's looking maybe at a coordinator that has some defensive background to him?
Yeah, I absolutely think so, and I think I think that that's a critical part of this next hire for him is someone who can bring some experience into that backfield. And I think you look at the guys you've got there, and you're going to have some more youth back there, because it's inevitable that Green Bay is going to draft a defensive back, probably a safety, probably pretty high, because they're going to be looking at that position pretty heavily. So yeah, I think that is the way to go. And if I were MLF, I would be looking at that. And I think that's where, when you look at the names, Durde from the Cowboys, the defensive line coach, I think that he's kind of a wild card there because of that. So if I'm MLF, I am looking at somebody who can work with the secondary. And again, like I said, I'm looking at the person. Now, the thing about Parker, I want to go back to him, is he was quality control in Green Bay. So this is a guy that actually was in Green Bay 19 and 20 under Pettin. And so he knows Green Bay. LaFleur knows him well. And again, when you start weaving through who knows who, a lot of these guys that have interviewed for positions have some type of connection with MLF over MLF's career with either Washington or the Titans or wherever he was. You're kind of seeing a little bit of, okay, I've got some history with this guy. So I think that's also important right now for LaFleur. But look, this goes back to you and I have been talking about this for quite a while now, and this hire is so critical for Matt LaFleur, and he's got to get this one right, and he's got to get it right from a team standpoint, whatever they decide to go with, but more importantly, from that person standpoint, and what kind of guy is he, and what is he going to bring to the locker room? And then the question comes down is, when you do make that hire, what position coaches currently on the staff in Green Bay might still be considered to retain their jobs? And so, yeah, this is where Green Bay is right now as a franchise. I think, again, MLF made the move to let go of Joe Barry. That was the first step in, I think, his development. And now seeing where he takes this, I think that's the next big step. And so we'll see if there's any other names that come out there today. When I heard that Parker, quote unquote, was offered the job last week, I was surprised because I figured that LaFleur would want to wait until this round to see what teams aren't playing anymore so that he could have permission to interview them. And so we'll see where this goes. But I think by the end of the week, Matt LaFleur makes a call and the Green Bay Packers have a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I saw some of that too. I think it was a couple of like podcast hosts or something like that saying they were told, that Parker was, and I was surprised too. Like, okay, I figured you'd want to cast a little bit of a wider net at that point, and maybe it kind of looks like that's the case with Wilson now. But as you mentioned, this is a big hire. So would you do you think Matt LaFleur takes a safer route, like a Wake Martindale, a guy who has coordinated defenses, or does he take a little bit of risk and bring in a guy that hasn't any coordinated experience at that point?
Yeah, I think he's definitely going the position coach route. I think based on just the characteristics of what you're seeing with the guys that they already have interviewed with and have asked to interview, you're definitely, and again, Staley is the outlier in that situation. I think you're seeing that LaFleur wants to go the up and coming, and I think, and I'm good with that. Again, tried and true. There's nothing wrong with, and I don't want to call. A lot of people refer to these as retreads. I don't. I think there's value there. If he wanted to go after Martindale, I'd have that conversation. It's certainly worth it. Now here's where I would go though, Captain, and what I would do is if you're going to go the young route, I would maybe, and a lot of teams are doing this now, go out and get that special consultant, that the guy that isn't necessarily quote unquote a coach, but someone who could lend another pair of eyes and lend some experience to the process. And so if he goes that route, I would like to see him then make a move to bring in one of those older guys, one of those more experienced guys. And again, as an older guy, I can refer to these guys as older guys. But I think they go that route where it's like, okay, we're going to bring in Parker, let's just say, and then let's bring in someone who can coach that defense, who has experience, who can, again, be another set of eyes out there. Because the one thing you look at with these up and comers, none of them have called a defense. And so that is a big step. And I don't care what level you're at coaching. And as you know, and you and I have talked, I've been a high school football coach and a youth coach and been doing that for a long time. And it doesn't matter what level you're at, taking that next step up. That's a hard step for some people. And we always talk about, he would have made a better coordinator than a head coach, or he would have made a better position coach than a coordinator. And so, that's a really hard step. And that's why I think if they go the young route, which I think that's where they're going, I think they bring in one of those special consultants to help out, especially in game day situations.
Kind of going back, Joe Duano joining us here this morning, going back to what you mentioned about the position coaches and such, whoever that hire is going to be for defensive coordinator, we've seen teams, head coaches just bring in all the position coaches. But would you rather see your defensive coordinator maybe be the guy to kind of lead the charge to find his assistants? Or do you think Matt LaFleur is still going to be that guy that is going to go out there and if they decide to make some moves at position coaches, LaFleur is going to be the guy that fills those spots?
I think it's got to be the DC. I am, when you look at the hierarchy on a football field, I think, your head coach hires the coordinators. I think the head coach needs to have some say. I mean, if there's somebody who he absolutely says, "Here's the deal," you've got you've got a blank slate except for this guy. You know, I worked with this guy in Atlanta, or I worked with this guy here. So yeah, I think the head coach needs to have veto power. But I think as a coordinator, you need to hire your guys, the guys that you trust, the guys that aren't going to be a problem. When you look at it, and again, I'm not pointing fingers one way or another, but obviously Jerry Gray and Joe Barry had issues.
Mhm.
But obviously they didn't. And so you want someone as the DC who's going to be following in line, and who's going to be who's going to be right there with you, and who has your back. And so I think the head coach should have veto power, but I think the DC or the OC, depending on the situation, has to hire their position coaches.
Just saying, Atlanta's changing things up. Maybe Jerry Gray could be available for that quote unquote consultant role. Just you never know. Bring him
Yeah,
back.
absolutely. I mean, and again, it all depends. I think now that consultant role, in my opinion, I think is more of a head coach decision, and so I think that's a guy who comes in, and again, just another pair of eyes, just another pair of ears that could bring experience to the table. And so, yeah, I mean, right now, I like the field that the Packers are going for. I like the guys we're hearing. Is there someone out there who we haven't heard that maybe Green Bay still wants to talk to, or is going to talk to? Not sure. And obviously, I think when this position came open, and a lot of Wisconsin fans, of course, Jimmy Leonard's name comes back out there, and I just don't see that anymore.
Mhm.
I think that ship has sailed on both sides, and so I don't see him. And there might be a surprise candidate out there. Who knows? There might be somebody that LaFleur is waiting on, or having conversations with, or whatever the case may be. But I think if you look at the field that's set right now, outside of Staley, you're getting an idea of what he's looking for. And I'm excited for all those guys. I think if they go any of the directions of the current list of candidates, I think it'd be a good hire.
Speaking of the safeties, something we were kind of talking about in our consulting series that we're doing. This was a position group that, even preseason training camp was kind of up in the air outside of Darnell Savage getting one of those spots. You got Savage as a free agent. You got Jonathan Owens as a free agent. Rudy Ford as a free agent. You're looking at the draft. You got maybe a couple of guys that could squeak in at the back end of the first round, maybe more so as day 2 picks, free agency, not a ton out there. If there was maybe one guy that you would bring back for the Packers of those 3 that I mentioned, who would that guy be?
Ooh, great question. I would say this, and I don't mean to sidestep the question, because the guy still with the highest ceiling, I think it's still Darnell Savage Jr.
Mhm.
All right, I think he's still the highest ceiling guy. But you and I talked about this. Between the Dallas game and the San Francisco game, you basically saw a microcosm of Joe Barry's defense. I mean, highest graded PFF defender against Dallas, lowest graded PFF defender against the 49ers. And so the inconsistency drives you nuts, but you still see some of that athleticism. And so I think the highest ceiling would be Darnell Savage. I think the safest bet, though, would be Rudy Ford. And I think, you saw some inconsistencies with Owens. And so I think, again, he is who he is. I think the safest pick, and probably the cheapest, would be Rudy Ford. And so I think Darnell Savage is going to garner some interest out there. And I think somebody's going to say, you know what? The athletic ability is there. I'm going to pay him. So I'm going to say right now that Darnell Savage probably gets a big contract, and the Packers at that point say, no, thank you. And then I think it's between Ford and Owens. And to me, I think Ford brings a little bit more to the table in the passing game. I think he's a little bit more of a guy that can make some plays in that passing game. And I think that's what you're going to be looking for. So out of the 3, based on everything, I'd probably say Rudy Ford is the safest and probably best pick to bring back. And that's taking into consideration all factors, including potential dollars spent.
Let me ask you this. We were talking a little bit about it on Friday, I believe. Inside linebacker. We know Quay Walker's going to be there. You got Isaiah McDuffie, who seemed to be taking snaps away from Devondre Campbell towards the end of the season. We saw a lot of good stuff from him. you look at this offseason now, Devondre Campbell, do you move on from him? He's got a big cap hit, but he's got a big dead cap hit too. You'd be saving about just a couple, maybe a few $1,000,000 over there. And you look at the depth there, it's kind of in question. But would you move on from Campbell this offseason, take that dead cap hit, you do save a few million, and see what you have with Isaiah McDuffie, who's in the final year of his rookie deal?
Yeah, I looked at the cap situation with Campbell, and that's a tough one as well. And again, it all depends on which DC comes in. But yeah, I thought McDuffie was playing better than Campbell, and Campbell is a step slower. He's been battling injuries the last couple of years. There's a lot of factors there, but also, Devondre Campbell, at least from the outside looking in and what you saw on the sidelines, even when he was injured, this was a guy who was still very much a part of the team. And I think, again, he's a good locker room guy from at least all indications. And so you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, we're only going to be saving a couple of million. And Green Bay still has a lot of work to do, and we're going to get into that as far as the cap goes, because they've got to restructure and do a lot to still get under the cap. And obviously in May, there's the Jordan Love extension. And so I would look at it in this and say, you know what? We're going to bring Devondre Campbell back. And because of the locker room, because of the presence, and because of depth, it never hurts to have depth at a position, especially the inside linebacker position. Now, flip that around, though. If a DC comes in and wants to go 4-3, then I say, Devondre Campbell, sorry, there's just not room for you at that point, and then you move on. But if they're staying with the 3-4, I don't see the cap savings and the value on the other side outweighing the opportunity of keeping him on your team. So if they're running the 3-4, we'll see where it goes. I would probably say Devondre Campbell could maybe a post June 2 cut. And so you kind of see how this thing plays out and see what you have in the draft. And so probably if I do cut him, not an immediate cut, but if you go out and get a guy in the draft that you really like, then maybe a post June 2 cut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting decisions on the horizon. That's for sure, man. So, and then, hey, draft process kind of unofficially begins this weekend with the Senior Bowl, right? That's kind of the kickoff for me when we kind of look at draft stuff coming down the pipe.
Yeah. And I will tell you, Packer Draft Nicks, if you want to get a head start on your mock drafts, look at the Senior Bowl, because the list of current Packers that the Packers scouted at the Senior Bowl is a lot. And Jim Nagy, who is the director of the Senior Bowl, has ties with the Packers. He's been in the organization actually previously. And so I'm just going to say, those guys that like to get out the mock drafts this early, the Senior Bowl, and pay attention to who the Packers are talking to, because don't be surprised at all when you look at the list who the Packers talk to at the Senior Bowl, that 2 or 3 of them end up on the draft board for the Green Bay Packers. So yeah, it's time, man. We got the Super Bowl, and then it's rolling into the off season, and before you know it, Jordan Love gets that extension, and then we're talking about the 2024 Green Bay Packers and how they're looking. And we got still lots of questions: what to do with Aaron Jones, what to do with David Bakhtiari. But obviously, I think right now, getting that DC position, number one thing in Green Bay to get done. And then you can start looking at player evaluation. But it's that time of year, man, Captain. And, I'm excited to be rolling into the new season.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll chat a little Super Bowl next week and get your picks over there too. Okay, bud?
All right, brother. Take care, man.
You got it. There you go. There's Joe DeGuano joining us here this morning. Let's take our final break before we close up the second hour. We'll be back after these quick words. Kind of feels like spring out there right now, doesn't it? Especially this week. Man, it felt like maybe the golf course is going to be opening up here. But kind of got me thinking here too, because this summer, wanna hit the road here a little bit more, do some shows, different locales, and all that good stuff. But I'm looking for some suggestions. All right, so if you head to sportstar1051.com, click on the fan cave tab over there. And if you're not familiar with the fan cave, go check it out, because we're trying to, we want to represent this portion of the states, whether it's the north, whether you want to call it northwestern Wisconsin, west central Wisconsin, combine the two over there. But we want to represent this side, a little 715 action. But I want to hit the road for some road trips and do some shows, do some podcasts on the road. So if you've got a suggestion, if you got, hey, this would be awesome, cool place to go do a show, or hit up. I know we got a lot of listeners in the Bloomer area. Jake from State Farm, if you're listening right now, but give me some ideas. Just head to sportstalk1051.com again, click on that fan cave tab, and you scroll through it, and you'll be able to see the section there where it says road trips, and link to email me and all that good stuff. But want to hit the road here a little bit. Want to represent our portion of the state here. All right, let's grow the brand, if you know what I mean. Let's have some fun this spring and summer too. So hopefully we'll get some dates on the schedule here, and kind of have some remote shows and hitting the road over there too. Also, if you had to, been doing a lot more stuff on the website, updating it and putting more stuff out there. Got a list now of where you can get some man cave lights. All right, click that up. Available at Wahlburgers, the Elbow Room in Eau Claire, now Famous Dave's in Eau Claire. Can also get 4-packs exclusively sold at Hy-Vee here in Eau Claire. And if you think that your favorite locale, your favorite location should carry some man cave light, got a little form on there too, where you can give us a nomination or you can give us a pick. All right, you can set it up or sign up that way over there too. But yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff over there. Plus, the Man Cave podcast, going to be adding a couple of new segments every Monday and Friday. When we have Justice on Mondays and Brandon on Fridays, we can, well, I shouldn't say we can, we are going to be doing or uploading the local sports segments. When we catch up on some of the local prep and college stuff with Justice and Brandon, we're going to be including that in a separate segment on the Man Cave podcast. So that'll be up there if you're not following or subscribing to the Man Cave podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford over there. You'll have those segments every Monday and Friday included on the Man Cave podcast playlist over there. Plus, starting this Thursday too, we're going to incorporate our conversations with Jake, our conservation warden, Jake Bulks. Those will also be separate segments on the podcast. So if you miss a chat with Jake, you can now go and listen to that conversation alone on the podcast. So make sure you're following and subscribing. That way you don't miss it. And if you got a few seconds, it takes you just a few seconds, if you don't mind. Like if it's on Spotify, 5-star review, Apple, 5-star review, or 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast too. And don't forget to click that follow and subscribe button. It's free. Otherwise, you can also check it out on YouTube. The podcast now uploaded daily on the YouTube page over there. So, all right, we got a few minutes left. Coming up in about 25 minutes, we'll chat some Badgers with Mr. RJ Cardinal from the Zone in Madison. So we'll talk about the newly minted 6th-ranked team in the country. Also throw in some Badger chats, or Badger hockey, men's and women's chat with him. Catching up on a couple of texts here. I bring Owens back, then draft DeJean from Iowa. He's a great player, can play a slot. But I also think he transitions to safety. I don't think Hamilton type of player is in the draft. He is special and rare. I think the defensive coordinator will be a secondary coach. They really have done a lot of work on those candidates. When you look at the candidates, they are looking for the best teachers. This vision looks like they are looking to build multiple front defense. All right. Don't forget also, it is a race place. What's your beef? Tuesday. What is your beef? Got anything that's kind of grinding your gears and you want to get off your chest? Let us know. Okay. Now is the time. You only got an hour left to do it, baby. Only an hour left to do it. We're going to get back to some more Bucks talk, but a couple more texts to get to here. We've got this is from Ben. Ben is saying, hopefully the Bucks can kind of continue to fix their defense. Decent start last night. Don't want to overreact to just one game, but hopefully with Doc coming in, they can buy into playing a little bit more defense with this team. Another text here for the Bucks. Excited to see the quote unquote second half of the season with this Bucks team. I think they'll be better. I just don't know if they have enough to beat the Celtics. Another texter regarding the Bobby Portis trade rumors. As much as I love Bobby Portis and think he is such a cog for this team, if they can get better defensively on the wing, I think that's a trade that they have to potentially look at. This is from Chris. Chris also saying, I loved Malcolm Brogdon when he was in Milwaukee. I know he wasn't a fan of the city itself, but if he wants to come back, or if the Bucks want to bring him back, they should seriously look into it. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. There was some rumblings about his thoughts on the city of Milwaukee and such, but Bucks willing to bring him back. I think Malcolm would come back and play for a contender. But would you give up Bobby Portis for that? If Bobby Portis is the main trade asset for this team, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to do that? So, all right. Shot clock's going to cut me off here in about 25 seconds. So, coming up next hour, we'll get back to some more hoops talk. Bucks, Doc Rivers era officially began last night. Badgers, top 6. Marquette, top 9. Badgers 6 in the country. Marquette number 9. We'll get back to a little green and gold talk here as well in case you're just joining us. We got another defensive coordinator candidate out there. We'll tell you who that is. Any names really jumping out at you? Or are you kind of like, talk to me when they hire somebody. Then I'll really not like it. I don't know. 2 in. We got one more to go. We'll be back after these news updates. All right, here we go. Final hour on this Tuesday morning. Big thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it. What are y'all doing here this morning? Hit me up with a text. I want to talk to you. 715-830-1912. Coming up here, we're going to talk some Badgers. RJ Cardinal will be joining us here in just a little bit. Badger Hoops, number 6 in the country. They've got a game against Nebraska coming up here, but hopefully Badgers aren't overlooking them. I know we are a little bit, looking ahead to that big-time Purdue game coming up here on Sunday. So Marquette also jumping into the top 10 in the latest polls. They're at number 9. So the state 2 men's basketball teams in the top 10, ranked top 10 in the country. Also, we'll get back to some more hoops talk here with the Bucks, excuse me. Thought we had a Bucks or Badgers thing coming up here. But the Bucks, the Doc Rivers era officially beginning last night. Bucks falling to the Nuggets. Timberwolves, big win on the road, going up against OKC in a battle of two teams that came in with the same exact record at the top of the Western Conference. And it was the Timberwolves that came away with the dub. Brewers, or I should say baseball-wise, speaking of Minnesota, the Twins trading Jorge Polanco to the Seattle Mariners in a 5-player deal that includes pitcher Justin Topa. So Twins making some moves. Yesterday, the Brewers and Rhys Hoskins and Matt Arnold talking a little bit with the media. Now that the deal is officially official, the Brewers formally introduced him yesterday after finalizing his contract that could be worth anywhere from $16 million for one season to $34 million over 2 seasons, and potentially, if it all works out, which sometimes playing out throughout a whole contract is pretty rare in sports, but could be $48 million over 3 seasons, depending on whether Hoskins exercises an opt-out following the first year and whether the sides agreed to pick up a mutual option following the second year. Hoskins saying yesterday that Milwaukee was always a great paper fit. And regarding his health, he tore his ACL last spring training. He said, it's been a nice offseason for me in the sense of it's one of my first in the last couple of years where I haven't felt like a rehabber. I really have been on a normal offseason strength program. There's definitely still some things that I've had to accomplish over the offseason to progress with the rehab, but February 1st will be coming up on 10 and a half months, 11 months. So by the time I get to Arizona for spring, I'm sure I'll be eased back in because it's been a year since I've been on the field, but I really should have little to no limitations once the games start, which is exciting for me. Hoskins, reading a little bit here from Brewers.com. While fielding offers, Hoskins said he only considered contenders. He liked that the Brewers have been to the postseason in 5 of the past 6 years. He liked the idea of hitting at American Family Field, where in 42 plate appearances, he owns a 342, 405, 790 slash line. And he liked the idea of no longer digging into a batter's box against Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta, and what has been a tough Brewers pitching staff. Reading in here, too, the Brewers have fielded incoming calls about Burns as he heads into his final season, shortstop Willie Adames, too. But since they remain with the team a little more than 2 weeks before pitchers and catchers report to spring training, investing in Hoskins on a short-term, high-dollar contract made sense as Milwaukee seeks to defend the National League Central Crown. Matt Arnold saying, when there are opportunities, we want to try to strike. We're trying to win as many games as we can here this year and in the long run, so that's a tricky thing for us to balance. I couldn't be more excited to have this type of profile here because he fits so well. It's just the type of player that we have needed. All right, let's give you a quick update on the Packers defensive coordinator search. As we mentioned a little over an hour ago, Ian Rappaport tweeting out that the Packers have requested to talk to Ravens defensive or secondary coach, defensive backs coach, Denard Wilson. So add Denard Wilson to the list of potential candidates. He was in his first season as defensive backs coach for Baltimore, which fielded the best pass defense in the AFC. He got to work with the likes of a Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey in that secondary back there. He was also defensive backs coach, pass game coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles right before that. A lot of people in Philadelphia kind of wondering, should the Eagles have bypassed him when they were looking for a defensive coordinator last year? A lot of people thought maybe he should have got that. Eagles bypassed him, and kind of wondering if there was some second guessing going on over there. But you look at some of the players he has worked with, some of the defenses that he's worked under. He's an intriguing guy for me, and of the names that have been reported out there that have or will interview for the Pack for that defensive coordinator position, Denard's probably at the top for me. He's probably at the top for me. Part of it is, too, because I look at the last couple of years, the defenses he's been a part of, Phillies, with Gannon over there when he was defensive coordinator, and you look at, the guys he's worked with, and then you look at Baltimore's defense with what they've done this year. That to me provides some intrigue. And I was reading a little bit during the break from Bill Huber, who covers the Packers, SI.com. These were a couple of quotes from Denard Wilson during training camp with the Ravens. The ball travels further and faster in the air than it does on the ground. We've got to eliminate the explosive plays, and we've got to keep the passing yards down. So that's very similar to, I remember Mike Pettin having a similar quote when he was with Green Bay. And I'm going to butcher the quote here because I'm doing it based off of memory. But essentially he said that it's quicker to travel to like Miami through the air than it is on the ground, insinuating priority of stopping the passing offense, which kind of sounds like what Denard is saying here too. This is the quote I like, though, too, from him. This is the quote I like. The biggest thing is attacking the ball with violence. We've got to create way more turnovers. The two big winning factors in football are explosive plays and takeaways. And you look at Green Bay's defense this past year, they were awful in the regular season at takeaways. Near the bottom. Not good. Not good. And you look at some of the other coaches that he has worked under. I mentioned, Todd Bowles. You look at Philly with Jonathan Gannon. He's also worked under He's worked under Jonathan Gannon. He's worked under the Ravens this year, but he's also worked under Todd Bowles. He's also worked under Greg Williams, longtime defensive coordinators in the league. Gotten different styles of defenses out there. And this was a quote, too, during training camp. Said, I've been tutored by them. I know how to run a ship. I know the responsibilities. So if the opportunity presents itself, I'll be ready for it. Talking about potentially being a defensive coordinator. Now, I don't know if this would mean anything, but he did play defensive back at the University of Maryland, where Darnell Savage is also from, too. So, and this is and he's worked in a couple different systems, too. Like, he's worked in a 3-4, which was the Ravens this past year, but then Eagles were out of a 4-3. And honestly, I think now with NFL defenses, I don't like to pigeonhole whether it's just going to be straight up 3-4 or 4-3. I think you got to be flexible. I think you've got to be a little bit, versatile in that. I don't like to just pigeonhole it. I think you have to have some versatility with how the offenses have evolved and the versatility involved in them. I'd like to have a little bit more versatility within my defense. So, but that's where you have it right now. That's kind of the updates out there regarding defensive coordinator positions or the defensive coordinator candidates for the green and gold. Again, any of these names kind of speaking to you, get you excited, get you a little intrigued, or I think, nah, not really. Now, if all of a sudden, like Ian or Schefter or Tom Pelissero all of a sudden tweets out that, hey, Packers are bringing in Jimmy Leonard to interview, then I think you're going to have a lot of people all pumped up and excited and freaking out about that. But I still feel like we are going to know who the new defensive coordinator is going to be at the end of this weekend. My gut could be completely off. That's what I feel like, though. So, all right, tell you what, let's take a quick break here. Coming up, we've got Badger Hoops. Now, they got a game coming up in a couple days against Nebraska. Huge game at the Kohl Center against Purdue on Sunday. Badgers now number 6 in the country. Number 6 in the country. Okay. Marquette also number 9. We're going to talk some hoops. We're going to talk a little AJ Storr with RJ Cardinal. We got Badger men's hockey and Badger women's hockey to catch up on as well. Senior Bowl is going to be going on this week. Got a couple Badgers over there. We'll see if RJ is going to be watching that, kind of paying attention to the Senior Bowl over there too, the Reese's Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. We'll hit that up too. So let's take a quick break, and we'll bring in RJ coming up in just a little bit.
Get total transparency. Use the promo code Patrick for $20 off free express shipping today. That's goodranchers.com and tell them we sent you.
Ring in the new year with better water. You may think you can save money and time by doing the DIY route with big box store alternatives. Don't be so sure with your drinking water. Book your free home analysis online now with a water expert at Gibson's Water Care. No long-term contracts. Locally owned American-made products. Need a plumber? Gibson's can help with basic plumbing needs too. Go online to Gibson's Water Care for more details.
He doesn't just talk sports, he knows sports. In fact, he and sports are best friends. I saw the two of them last night knocking back a couple of cold ones. The Dan Kasper Show, weekday mornings from 6 to 9.
You've got to go back to December 28th, 2020, the last time the Badger men's basketball team was ranked in the top 6. So a little over 3 years ago. A little over 3 years ago is the last time you gotta go back to that. Let's talk some more Badgers with Mr. R.J. Cardinal this morning. Even with their 6th ranking now in the AP polls, R.J., tell me if I'm wrong on this. I still feel like, are they a little bit overlooked from the national sense right now?
Maybe a little bit, but you start having some people who say this is a team that has Final Four potential all of a sudden. So, you had some under the radar things going there for a while, but I think after you're started beating teams and like your only real flop of a loss so far this year is to Penn State, because Providence was doing well up until their top player went down with an ACL injury, or one of their top players. So they've kind of hit a slide here. But at the time, I don't think you could call that one a bad loss, because, we could see it as that when we lost to them. But after our game where they went on a bit of a run, that was okay. But yeah, so really, your only real bad loss right now is to Penn State, and you're moving through and continuing to win. You've only lost one conference game on the road. So, you got a tough battle coming here Thursday? Yeah, Thursday at Nebraska. So it's one of those, hopefully the team itself can keep playing that kind of underdog role, but when you got a number like that next to your name, does get a little harder mentally for you to keep that up. But little under the radar, but I think people are starting to pick up on Wisconsin, except for some AP writers who are still putting them out of the top 10 at least after what they have done so far this season. Whatever they think of the Big Ten, or I guess is their reasoning. But there is somebody who's had them, beat writer for UConn, had them at 18th. But that could be one to try to elevate the Big East. He still had Marquette at number 9. So it is what it is. We've talked about AP writers in other sports before, where, sorry, it's your job to watch more than just the beat you cover. And it shows that you still think Wisconsin's Wisconsin, and apparently don't think well enough of the Big Ten to rank them.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So one of those players, he had a magnificent game the other day against Michigan State, and it's a guy that we have been talking about a lot this season, but just looking at his last 5 games, he's been in double-digit scoring every single one of them. I'm talking AJ Storr here, 28 points against Michigan State, 15 against the Gophers, 15 against Indiana, 23 against Penn State in that loss, 14 against Northwestern. He's not going to win Player of the Year or anything like that, but is this a guy who's also making a name for himself, do you think, across the nation for his play this year.
Yeah, it's one of those people. They weren't surprised he picked Wisconsin. It was closer to home. They felt he was more of an athlete than Wisconsin had on their roster, and I think we're seeing that now. I have seen one sports writer tweeting out, and people thought it was a bad. Wisconsin fans thought it was a bad fit. I don't ever remember anybody saying it was a bad fit. They were just surprised he picked Wisconsin for what we saw on tape. And that's not calling it a bad fit. That was like, hey, we got an athlete. And you and I even talked about it when we were talking about him committing and saying this is the kind of thing that can make these swing offense go. And we saw it in 2015. Where if you have athletes playing in this system, it can be up and down, a high point per possession kind of offense. And we're seeing that this year. Scoring's up for Wisconsin as of a few previous seasons. Their defense is still doing well. It's on this run, even in the losses, for the most part, they're scoring over 70 points. I think there's only one game in here that in the past few, you beat Minnesota 61-59. Other than that, you have been scoring upwards of 70 points a game. So on this little streak of one loss and however many wins it is now, to one loss in the last X amount of games. I'm kind of like spitballing here because I don't remember the exact, but it is impressive what this team's doing offensively. And I mean, we've talked about how maybe having AJ Storr is a guy who can open things up for other people. But then when those people start playing, they realize they can't focus on just AJ Storr.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows him to go back to being the guy. I guess we can start calling him the guy.
Yeah,
I
the
think.
guy. Yeah,
I know earlier in the season we were talking about, maybe not all the time he's going to be that guy, but we'll call him the guy. And then, like we have been kind of trotting around the past couple of weeks, Klesmit has been seeming to be the number 2 guy,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that number 2 is still a rotating kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was looking at AJ Storr's numbers. He has scored in double-digit figures all but 2 games, and those 2 games were back in November, and one of them was Virginia. I mean, outside of November, he's scored in double figures every single game for the Badgers this year. Unreal.
He's better than we thought he was going to be in
Mm-hmm.
this system, and he can make jump shots. We've seen him, hold onto a rim and grab a ball, and which is not legal, but hey, it looked really cool. We saw him do breakaway dunks. We've seen, he's just the kind of guy who can change the perception of a program, and hopefully that's happening here. And I honestly would like to see him stay. I don't think he's having a great enough year to hopefully think he's going to be leaving for the NBA.
Right.
But he seems to be a guy who's on a trajectory to go to the NBA. So hopefully we get him for at least another year, and he can be the straw that stirs the drink for at least one more season after this.
Another player that I think is kind of having I'll say interesting season is Stephen Kroll, and I know he's averaging just under 12 points per game, but he's 7.5 rebounds per game. His scoring might be a little up and down. I know he went through that stretch in end of December, early January, where he was putting up double figure scoring, but his rebounds have kind of been consistent over there. But is this the version of Stephen Kroll that I guess maybe we were kind of hoping to see for the last couple of years, in your opinion, RJ?
He does seem to be a little more of a presence around the rim. In years past, we've talked about missing bunny shots, not really being a presence on the defensive end of the glass. So I don't think we're there yet, because I'd still like to see the kind of guy with the progression we saw like in years past, like Jared Bergeron, Frank Kaminsky, around the rim, be like that guy who can take over a game down low. And I'm not sure we have that still. But he is getting to the point where we're watching him and seeing a progression. It's just not that kind of junior, senior, big man progression that we've seen in years past. So I'd like to see a little more out of him, but there's still the time periods here where he does seem to revert into, I'm going to try a little sky hook, bang it off the back of the rim, and it's going to go out instead of in. So we're seeing improvement. I'd like to see more.
We got that Nebraska game coming up, and then obviously the big one against Purdue on Sunday. I know the Badgers defeated Nebraska earlier this season. Nebraska 15-6 overall. Any concern about a letdown game ahead of a big game like Purdue coming up here at the Kohl Center?
Absolutely. I hate to say that, but Nebraska's home splits are heads above their road splits. Their shooting percentage is much better at home. Like every statistic is like, you're looking at their splits and you're like, how does this team play so bad on the road? They beat Purdue at home. They've won some big games at home. I think their only loss at home this year is to Creighton, I think I was reading. So they defend that court pretty well. And the Badgers have never had an easy time playing at their new arena. And I'm not sure they've even ever played at the old arena. I don't remember. I remember when the new arena opened, well, no, they probably have, because that opened after 2010 when they joined the conference. So, it's just been hard going for the Badgers in Nebraska. So, I hope there's not a letdown, but it's definitely one I can see a tough game happening, and hopefully it's not give them a 10-point lead like we did. Absolutely, you could see a game that is a hard fought, knock 'em out kind of style. I'd like to say this team isn't going to be overlooking anybody to move on to Purdue before it's time to. But Nebraska, a much better team at home.
Do you, not to overlook Nebraska now, but since this is the only time we'll talk to you before the game, how does Wisconsin, in your opinion, match up against a team like Purdue?
Just like years past, I'm not sure we have the big men to really irritate Zach Edey and take him out of the game. Other positions, I think defensively we can match up well, but it's that, can you stop Zach Edey and the guys inside? In the past, it's been a team effort. It's going to have to be a team effort again. But it's really, that's the point where I think Purdue could be able to take over the game. Zach Edey, being what he is, he's big enough even at, he's got the weight for the height, whereas some of our guys like Crowell and Nolan Winter right now are just not big enough to match up well with him. I think that's where the main matchup problem is, and it's one of those, though, that can lose you a game if you can't get Edey into foul trouble and your bigs start getting into foul trouble while guarding him. So we'll see if there's some good home calls coming up there, but it's going to be a tough game come Sunday as well.
Yeah. RJ Cardinal joining us here, switching gears here just a little bit to hockey now. Now men's splitting the weekend series, although that last game was pretty exciting OT thriller over Michigan there, losing the first one 1-5, then getting that 6-5 victory in OT. And now, RJ, it doesn't get any easier because you're back at home, but you're welcoming the Gophers to town this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, overall, it's one of the biggest weekends probably in Kohl Center area history, because I'll include the LeBron Arena in there.
Mm-hmm.
Friday, Saturday, you got number 4, number 9 teams in the nation going at it in men's hockey. Women's hockey, Saturday, Sunday, you got the number 4 and number 16 team in the country going at it with the women's hockey team in St. Cloud State. And then, Sunday, you have 2 top 10 programs in Purdue and Wisconsin going at it in men's basketball. But number 9, Minnesota comes into town. It's swept them earlier in the year, and this is really one you kind of need to take it to them again, and hopefully get the kind of performance that you did earlier in the year when Minnesota was ranked number 1, and you beat them 5-2 and 3-2, I think, if I remember correctly. But they're coming on. They're coming to you as a team that's won like 5 or 6 out of their last 8. No, that doesn't sound right. Wow, they had 1 loss in there for like the last 8 games, I think. So they're coming on a little bit of a hot streak, and they coming off of a split, I believe, with Michigan State. So that's where their 1 loss is, and that's a team that Wisconsin's trying to chase down. So they're coming into town with a bit of confidence, and I mean, we were talking about last week going into the Michigan game that this team needed to be able to skate with Michigan, and Friday night they did not, but skate and score with Michigan, and Saturday they turned it around, kept up the scoring with them, and dug out that overtime victory with a 6-5 win, and got the extra point on the weekend. So this is as big of a series as they're going to have. I think I saw Friday night's a whiteout, and they're opening the third deck. I mean, it's another one where, I mean, it's awesome that they're opening the third deck, but I can remember when the third deck was always open and it wasn't an issue of filling the Kohl Center for hockey games, even when you knew it was an outmatched kind of game and they were expected to just be a blowout sweep if with somebody coming into town. So it's good to see interest getting back into the hockey team, but when you go from you're outside of 1 NCAA appearance in the last few years to moving ahead of the 13 wins you had last year, and you're the first team in college hockey to have 20 wins on the year. So that's always awesome to see, and it's good to see people being back into hockey, and this is goes back to the old WCHA rivalries, and it's just one of those, like, fill the barn and get people back into hockey, and it's a team that at least people know. Mm-hmm. So even if they're casual hockey fans, they'll come in and root for the Badgers.
Final question for you, because I got to throw a football one in here every time you're on. Kind of a 2-parter. One, you got the Senior Bowl coming up this week. Is that something you kind of watch personally? And then Tanner Bortolini's over there. How big of a performance do you think he has to have at the Senior Bowl for his draft stock? Or do you think he's going to, just because the type of player he is and the program he comes from, that he's going to be maybe an early pick in the upcoming draft this spring?
I really just watch it for Wisconsin. So when they post clips and stuff like that, I'll watch those. Don't really care about other people, but I mean, it's trying to see how Badgers are doing. I don't think Bortolini will be going as a center. I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of system he goes into. If he goes into a system that's under center, I think he'll be okay there, but definitely think he'll be more of a guard at the NFL level, and has proven he can play guard at a D1 level here. I think he'll be fine at guard if in the NFL, but it'll be one of those to be able to possibly be better than a 5th to 7th or undrafted free agent. He'll have to put a pretty darn good week together for the NFL scouts to think better of him and be in light of more of those Badger offensive linemen that people have quote unquote reached for, and yet those players are still doing pretty darn well in the NFL, even though they were a reach apparently. So I think for him, yeah, definitely has to have a great week of practice to have anybody think that he's going to be above a fifth round pick to kind of improve his draft stock.
I don't know if you've been kind of looking at some of the stuff for like not maybe mock drafts, but like kind of rankings. And last week I saw CBS Sports had, for running backs, they listed Braylon Allen as the number one running back in the draft. And that's the only place I've seen him where he is ranked number one. You've got, it's kind of all over the place here, but I'm really fascinated to see where Braylon Allen kind of falls in this draft or where the mocks have him as we get a little bit closer there.
Yeah, I mean, he's still got the quote unquote issues that Wisconsin running backs have had in the past. He's even got he's sat out a bit and with injury. He had a heavy workload. He's not necessarily the best pass catcher in out of the backfield, but we have seen him do it. So he's got the stereotypical issues that a Wisconsin running back does. So I'm not sure I see him as the number one back, but like you said, only CBS Sports had him listed there. Definitely see him as a back that'll be probably drafted third or fourth round. But then again, that seems to be more so where running backs who aren't considered elite are getting drafted anyway. I mean, you don't see too many running backs getting that second huge contract anymore. So, I mean, it's not like teams want to pay them upfront before they even start playing as a first or second round draft pick, unless they know this is going to be this person's going to be an integral part of our offense moving forward. So, maybe a late second, third, fourth round pick for Braylon Allen, and that's just going off of how people perceive his scenario of injury, not injury prone, but he's got a history of injuries. And most of it's like probably leg health. So that doesn't help either. As well as overusage in the offensive system he was under. And in this day and age, you got to be able to catch out of the backfield. And I still think there's the perception that Wisconsin running backs can't catch out of the backfield unless their name is Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. RJ, dude, appreciate it as always, man. Enjoy the rest of the week. Hopefully, when we catch up with you next Tuesday, we're talking about a win against Purdue. And maybe even, I mean, I got to imagine you take care of business against Nebraska and Purdue, you're probably a top 5 team in the latest polls then.
Yeah, all depending on what happens ahead of you. I mean, you can only do what's laid out in front of you. No reason to worry about anybody else there. But yeah, I would think if you beat the number 2 team, and if you sweep the week, that's definitely something where you can see the Badgers moving up. So hopefully we see sweeps all week for the basketball team and men's and women's hockey.
I agree, man. All right, dude, we appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll chat again soon. Okay, bud?
Sounds good. We will talk to you later.
You got it. RJ Cardinal. Great stuff, as always, from our dude, RJ. Let's take a quick break and wrap things up here this morning. Picks and predicts coming up after these quick words. Picks and predicts time, brought to you by the Elbow Room right here in Eau Claire, right next to Banbury Place. Go grab yourself a man cave light while watching the ball game over there. Let's do some NBA games that's on tap for tonight. Pacers visiting the Boston Celtics. Pacers 11-11 on the road. Boston, one of the best home teams in the association, 21-2. Yeah, I'm going to go. Boston's favored by 7.5 in this game. I'm going to go Boston. There's no question on that. Part of me is just wondering, do I think Boston covers by 7.5? Yeah, screw it. Why not? Boston wins, and I think they cover. I get a little nervous on that, but with Indiana, especially the highest scoring team in the NBA, yeah, I think Boston slows them down a little bit. They win by 8. They win by 8. I'll go Boston. Let's go with the Jazz and the Knicks. Jazz and Knicks, New York, 30-17. Again, really good team at Madison Square Garden, 16-5 at home, 30-17 overall. Utah sitting there, 500, but they're awful on the road, 9-18. New York, 4.5. I'm pounding that one. Give me New York, and easily covers in that game. We've got Philadelphia visiting Golden State. Philadelphia looking for their 30th win of the season. They're 29-16, 12-10 on the road, taking on the Warriors, who are 12-13 at home. Golden State favored by 3.5 in this game. I know we got some game time decisions for Joel Embiid and such. I'm still taking the 76ers in this game. I'm going to take the 76ers. We got college hoops, just a couple games. Let's go with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, 15 in the country, going up against number 25 TCU. Texas Tech 5-1 in conference play, 16-3 overall. 4-3 TCU in conference play, 15-5. TCU is favored by 5.5. 5.5. Give me the Red Raiders of Texas Tech in this game. I'm going to go Texas Tech. Then finally, Marquette, number 9 in the country. Number 9 in the country, Marquette, going up against Villanova. At Villanova, 11-9 on the season, 4-5 in conference play. Marquette 15-5, 6-3 in conference play. In their previous game back on the 15th, Marquette defeated Villanova 87-74. Nova favored by 1.5. Nope, I'm going with Marquette. I'll go with Marquette in this game. They win, and they cover 1.5. They win by at least 2. So that's your picks and predicts. Again, brought to you by the Elbow Room here in Eau Claire. All right, recapping some of the stuff that we hit up on. We got another name added to the defensive coordinator watch list, according to Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network. The Packers have requested permission to interview Denard Wilson from the Ravens. He is interviewing, it sounds like, for the Titans defensive coordinator job today. He's number 1 on my list of the reported ones out there. So I hope Green Bay has a shot to bring him in and talk to him and maybe even offer him the position. But that's another name added to the list. Bucks began the Doc Rivers era last night. Was a loss to the Nuggets, 113-107. But Doc telling his team afterwards that whoever told you that you can't play defense was lying. He thought he saw some positive stuff from their defensive performance, especially from the half-court defense last night. Bucks will have the night off today before taking on Portland in Game 2 of their 5-game road trip. Timberwolves, though, picked up a big win last night, going up against OKC, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Those two teams tied at the top of the conference yesterday, but with the win by the Timberwolves, they now moved a half game up, which is now Denver half game behind them. It's a tight race for the top there in the Western Conference. Baseball-wise, the Brewers officially introducing Rhys Hoskins yesterday to the media. Also, the Twins trading Jorge Polanco to the Mariners in a 5-player deal that includes Justin Topa, pitcher, coming back to the Minnesota Twins. Pitchers and catchers getting set to report here in just a couple of weeks. Kind of feels like spring weather out there right now. Now you're talking spring training and pitchers and catchers reporting. probably gets the mojo going there just a little bit. Feels like just a little bit there. So coming up tomorrow, got another edition of the Business of Sports brought to you by Security Financial Bank. We'll hit that up. Also, it's stock reports. So whose stock is up and whose stock is down. That's your homework assignment. Okay. Let's get you a passing grade here. Think about whose stock is rising and whose stock is falling. You can play along with us and hit us up with those texts starting tomorrow. So we'll hit that up. We'll also hit up any more talk about some potential other candidates out there for the for the Packers defensive coordinator if it drops tomorrow. But we will continue our consulting series. So we've looked at defensive coordinator, we've looked at coaching, we've looked at running backs, we've looked at offensive line, we've looked at inside linebackers, we have looked at safeties today. Now you're kind of like, if we go offense, defense, we're looking at quarterback. It's like, okay, good. Wide receivers, yep, they look good. Then offensive tight end, yeah, they look good. Let's take I know I said I kind of want to go back and forth offense and defense here, but since we did safeties today, let's take a look at the corners tomorrow. Because maybe some intrigue surrounding that in the offseason. I think Jair's back. I know some people are still wondering whether he's going to be back or not. Then you've got the emergence of Carrington Valentine this year. Eric Stokes, been dealing with injuries in the last year plus couple years. How high of a priority is it for the Packers to maybe address corner again in the draft? They traded Rasul Douglas halfway through the season. Carrington Valentine, from what you've seen this year, are you good if he's a top 3 corner on your team? Are you good if Eric Stokes, with his injury history, top 3 on your team? Keyshawn Nixon, slot corner. Probably know more about him with his special teams play, return ability, another all-pro year in that category. Probably worth bringing back just because of that. But what did you think about his play defensively this year? So let's hit the corner market tomorrow with our consulting series as that continues tomorrow. Catching up on some last couple texts here. I agree with you. I would love the prospect of Denard Wilson becoming the new Packers defensive coordinator. Look at his pedigree with Philly and Baltimore. I would love to bring that to Green Bay. That was from Matt on the texting line. This is another one. This is from Brian on the texting line. Going with the Bucks here. I'm one of the few that actually liked the Doc Rivers signing, I believe. I think he's going to make a big difference with this Bucks team. Excited to see the changes and growth for this team the rest of the season. Last up here, because shot clock's going to cut me off here. This one is from Adam. The Denard Wilson report intrigues me. I like his history. I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about him just from what you have said and reading online, but he seems like he would be a really good fit to become the defensive coordinator for the Packers. All right. Still, like I said, he's of the reporting. He's my number 1 wish list. Honestly, he might be kind of creeping up there overall too. Number 1. I like the background. I like the experience over there. So we shall see. Still think it's going to be by this weekend. Still think we'll know by this weekend who the new defensive coordinator is going to be. And I think we're going to know here soon too about, in the next couple days, the final head coaches for Washington and Seattle. I think they're going to make their decisions this week too, which, then that's going to be kind of like they're going to want to pick their defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators and such too. Talent pool might be draining a little bit. A little urgency to make your decision. Big thanks for everybody tuning in, participating. Hey, let's do this again tomorrow, all right? I want to talk sports with you again tomorrow. It's a lot of fun. Let's do it. 6 a.m. See you then.